no further ado, I'm going to turn over to our Master of Ceremonies, Brother Mitchell Lay. He will take the proceedings from here. Thank you for your lovely singing, and so far, so good. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. Bless the name of Jesus. Now I'm going to sit throughout most of this session. Yes, because this is not a session where I need to stand and, expound. Bless God. Bless the name of Jesus. Well, first I want to welcome you to this activity, panel discussion on issues affecting men. And I just want to share with you a few things regarding the objectives of tonight's session and activity. So, the district men recognize that men have a particular role under God. And we have accepted that we have not been very good at, fulfilling that role. And recognizing that, we realize that if you recognize a problem, you need to do something to address it. Yes? So this is part of the process of us trying to address some of the issues that men face, not only in the church, but in their homes, and also in the physical bodies as well. Bless God. So some of the objectives we want to achieve tonight include, we want to share knowledge on those issues affecting men. But we also want to share observations. Yes? So not only do we want to share knowledge, we want to share observations. And I'm happy that there's some women here as well, because sometimes we don't acknowledge some of the things that we can't see, some of the issues that affect us, but the women on the outside can see. So we want to share some knowledge, and we want to share some observations as well. We also would like to motivate men. We want to stimulate men to be productive and to fulfill their God-given roles. So we certainly want to do that as well. And then, of course, for those who are motivated sufficiently well, we would like to provide some guidance. Bless God. So we want to provide some guidance. We have a very distinguished panel today, and I'm sure they'll be able to address your concerns. Yes? Okay, so what is going to happen for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to first invite the panelists to the head table. So I want to invite the panelists in. Reverend Dr. Alexa Jackson, can you join me at the table, please?
I can't join you.
Have a seat, sir. Yes. And then I want to invite Mr. Sidney Rettemeyer to the head table as well. Join us. Good to have you, sir. Excellent. And then I want to invite Dr. Courtney Lewis to join us as well. Good to have you, sir. So what will happen for the next several minutes, we will have some presentations from each panelist. So I will introduce each panelist just before their presentation. They will make a short presentation, and they will include the areas of spiritual issues, physical issues, and social mental issues. So there'll be three distinct areas of concentration in the presentations. And I'd prefer to have the presentations go undisturbed. And I would encourage you to make notes as to what type of interventions you'd like to make after the presentation. So after the presentations, we'll have an open discussion, question and answer session. And then we will close, hopefully, before too late. Yes? Bless God. So that is the format that we'll have this evening. Now, I know you should have brought your offering, so we're going to take up the offering at the end. Bless God. So don't go out before you get the offering sorted out. All right? Bless the Lord. So, as I indicated, we want to introduce each panelist just before the presentation, and then we invite them to present on a particular area. So the first panelist we have is Reverend Dr. Alistair Jackson. And Reverend Dr. Jackson is a minister in the Wesleyan Holiness Church, and he's currently the pastor of the Lion of Judah Wesleyan Holiness Church in Willikies Village. He has currently 37 years of ministry. This year, 37 years of ministry. He has a diploma in theology from the Caribbean Wesleyan College. He has a bachelor and doctorate in Christian counseling from Covington Theological Seminary. And of course, he's covered quite a few different areas in terms of certificate courses, which may be difficult to mention. Yes, but he has, of course, done quite a few certificate courses as well. He's the husband of one wife, the father of 2 children, and he currently serves as the Assistant District Superintendent of the Wesleyan Holiness Church in the Caribbean, Antigua District. Above all things, he considers himself a servant of the Most High God, serving the Lord since 1974. I want to welcome Reverend Dr. Alistair Jackson to present to us on spiritual issues affecting men. Reverend Jackson.
Good evening. Good evening. Just need to be a little bit more volume or something. All right, my first line of business is to apologize for being late. Well, I just came from a funeral, went home, didn't even have time to change, as you realize. Yeah, I know. I know. Thanks for confirming it. Yeah, so that's why we came a little late, because I got home Minister 7. You started at 7, right? You sure you started at 7? Somebody 7? Okay, that is telling me everybody clock minding their own business. So that's why we were late. We want to apologize for that, because I don't like to be late for anything. Let me say that what the district men is doing is commendable and has a lot of merit to it. But I must tell you, I'm sure one of these presentations could take this night and more. One, just one. Let alone for us to cover all 3 of these heavy weight. Because especially, Mr. Moderator, the issues, spiritual issues facing men, they are many and varied. We could not cover them all here this evening. I'll just mention one of them, but I'll let you know the area I sense that our greatest problem is. Right? We have the issue of leadership in the home, and that involves a whole lot in terms of men being the head and functioning in that capacity. Because I said to people, I see people walking around one hand, one foot, sometimes one eye. I never see a man or woman walking around without a head. Never. So if the head is not functioning, it means that the rest of the body is going to be in serious trouble. Because the head is what controls the entire system. All right? I'll say that much on that for now. The question of the issue of men loving their wives as Christ loved the church. That's an issue there, and I'm not sure we're able to deal with it adequately, Mr. President. You have the issue of men being the provider for their homes, wives, children, and this involves much more than just bringing in the money. It means like being a visionary. And by the way, there's a book that is written by Pastor Griffith, God's Portrait of God's Model Man. That's a very good book. And I was supposed to bring my copy with me. It's a very good book to read, and it will, I believe, address a number of these issues. All right? There's the issue of respect in the home. Respect from wife to husband, children to father. And because when a man gets a certain level of respect in the home, it provides a certain level of comfort for him, and he's able to function even better. But if you have a wife that's not respecting you and children rude, it makes it difficult. You have the issue of sex. I know you didn't expect to hear that one, but that can be an issue. And the issue could be not getting enough of it, wanting too much of it, or can't do it. Having dysfunction. See, and that could be a serious issue. And it is an issue. Right? I mean, I wouldn't ask. But that could be an issue. But Mr. Moderator, as I thought of this, the biggest issue that the Lord put in my spirit is this. The biggest issue for many of us as men, it has to do with our past. Our past. A lot of, if not all of what we are today or will be in the future is determined by our past or is as a result of our past. How we were brought up, the environment in which we grew up, how we see our parents deal with each other and with us as children. We inherit most, if not all, of our behavioral chains and relational traits from our parents or our ancestors. A lot of things get lost because one generation failed to teach the other or pass on the principles and values that will facilitate for good family, church, community, national relationships. And I've said a lot there, and it is a lot that is embodied in all of this. Because if you take, for example, the environment in which you grew up, it provides a whole lot. It's going to make you a better person or a bitter person. And depending on which one you come out with, you're going to take it with you right into any relationship you have in the future. And it's going to create problems. So, I know that there could be a whole lot of other issues that men could raise here. All right, and even as I said, I mentioned there are so many here. I've just scratched the surface. But I know that there are other men here and women have issues with men that men need to know. As you say, sometimes because we ourselves, we feel that that's how we were. So therefore, it must be accepted. But if a woman tells you something, we need to pay attention to it. All right? If you grew up in an environment where you are accustomed to get hugs and embracing, people are affirming you, encouraging you, it is likely to create a positive impact on your life, and you will take it into relationships. Mr. Moderator, I believe I've said enough there. I went over my time, right? Yeah, okay. So, this is, so what I'm saying here, we can't get into this in the depth that we would really want it tonight, because you have others to deal with. But we'll see as much as we can to respond to these issues, and I guess more.
Excellent. We want to really thank Reverend Dr. Alexis Jackson for his presentation, and I trust that you have you've made some notes, mentally or otherwise, as to what areas you'd love to have further clarification on or to ask any questions on. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Sidney Rettemeyer. I pronounced your name correctly, sir? Bless. Thank you very much. So, Sidney Rettemeyer is a born Guyanese, living in Antigua for the past 33 years. Look like you live here longer than you live in Guyana. He's a father of 3, a mentor for young adults, and presently works at the American University of Antigua Counseling Center. Academically, he has achieved his master's in mental health psychology out of the University of Liverpool, and was also awarded the status of a registered addiction specialist out of California in 2014. His main line of occupation is in the field of mental health and addiction counseling, which complements his theological credentials obtained since the early 90s. Sidney is also engaged in part-time counseling sessions where he conducts individual, family, and couples therapy sessions. Apart from individual sessions, Sidney is also conducting lectures on areas like spirituality, mental health, and addiction. He's a motivated speaker and is currently a CC member of the local Toastmasters Club. Mr. Sidney Rettemeyer, we want to invite you to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Church. I intend to bring to the table this evening more on the side or the flavor of mental health. And I think that it is a fitting topic for our communities today. And when I said mental health, I mean how can we live a life of well-being? And the attachment to that seems to have its roots in one's spiritual nature, who I am as an individual. I think most of what I'll be sharing this evening as we continue this program is speaking from my heart, and a lot of it will be from my experience, my personal experience, strength and hope within this thing called life. Because when we really talk about men and addressing the men's issues and our purpose, the male purpose for living, I do agree wholeheartedly with Reverend Jackson. It does have its roots, and its roots can be from just where we're coming from, how we were shaped and formed. And usually the society, the home, the country, the community has quite a lot to do with the influence of that, of how we are shaped as individuals. And from a psychological perspective, we get a chance that we could detect exactly areas in which we know what formed us, and identifying it gives us a chance to discover itself. And it seems very much similar. It seems very much similar to, how should I put it, just being in a setting where I'm able to recognize who I am in the presence of God. What is my purpose here on the planet? If you really think about it, just being born, we knew nothing. We knew nothing about our existence. We were told that we came out of our mother's womb, and as men, life happened. Somehow consciousness grew, and we realized that we're 4 or 5 years old. This is my brother, my sister, my home, my friends, my teacher. And within that experience of just living, let's look at it as information being applied. It's not like getting that new cell phone and you just start putting in all the information. And information is being packed upon information. And as we continue to live and to exist and to breathe and to live life, some of those experiences we can look back in our minds and realize that it was very memorable. Made sense because it was beautiful. Okay, I can recall some childhood experience which was really great. Right? And then there's some disturbing ones. You know, what are the disturbing ones? And usually, we never really recognize how much that we're, and I'll say it like this, we're consciously unconscious that we're subconsciously driven. So there are times when there are characteristics that usually comes out of us, and we just really didn't intend for it to be like that, but we did it. I think scholars always wonders. When you read some of the scholarly reports, they always wonder about, what the Apostle Paul meant when he said, the things I want to do, I do not do. And that's what I do not, I do. But there's a law within me. Right? And I'm sure that we all could agree that we have found ourselves at times in places of that, wanting to do but just not doing. Wanting to being but not being. And it almost seems as if it's a struggle for purpose. We could check the program. I would call it program, or the history of who we are and how we developed and how we were created and how we were fashioned and formed by our communities and environment. The real question is, could this change? Yes. And I think that the only thing that I would present that I recognize that is powerful enough to change it, is its roots in spirituality, a spiritual connection. Because it's something that basically gives the harmony within self, and it extends itself to the world around me. It extends itself to the world around us. And that's what I would love to expound on this evening as we continue this deliberations on this topic of purpose. Right? Another area that I would love to invite you to consider is the topic of fear, because we can have so many issues that could affect men. But there's a mother of it all, and it boils down to that four-letter word, fear. We look at anger, we look at anxiety, we look at depression. Right? It exists for something. It is a symptom of something, and the root is fear. And how we could readdress fear, I think, would be an affordable discussion to understand that, in understanding it. As men, we were taught to be brave. Within our side, we were taught to be men. And when it comes to the emotional aspects of our existence, there's so many things that could have been covered and just stayed dormant and quiet. But it shows itself up in other areas. Remember, I said before, we're consciously unconscious, that we're subconsciously driven. And that's how we breathe. So the world looks on. The world looks on and sees something and questions, make comment. We even get the feedback as to who we are. But what's the bottom line? To discover oneself is to recover oneself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sydney. We appreciate your presentation. I want to now introduce Dr. Courtney Lewis as our final presenter for tonight before we have an open discussion and question and answer. Dr. Lewis was educated at the Institute for Medical Education, Pina del Rio, Cuba. He completed a University of the West Indies approved internship at the Mount St. John Medical Center. He's also a graduate of the Center of Medical Simulation, Boston, Massachusetts. He's a registered instructor for the American Heart Association, as well as the National Association for Emergency Medical Technicians. He has served as a registered physician in Antigua and Barbuda, in both the Mount St. John's Medical Center as well as the private sector. He is currently employed at the American University of Antigua, where he focuses his attention on the health and welfare of the community, both at home and globally. He's the Assistant Director of both the Departments of Clinical Simulations and the Emergency Medical Training Center. He sits as the Chair of the Board of Clinical Simulation. He's the Director of the Emergency Response Team and the Emergency Medicine Interest Group. He is the Medical Director of the Emergency Medical, EMS, and the Paramedic programs. He also serves as the campus physician in the AUA Health Center. He also maintains a faculty position as the Assistant Professor in the Department of Clinical Medicine as well. Seems like a very busy man. Dr. Lewis is the President and CEO of the LifeSmart Pharmacy and the Managing Director of the Dr. C. Lewis Medical and Associates Medical Center in St. John's, Antigua. Dr. Lewis spends his scarce spare time, we understand the word scarce for sure, he spends his scarce time with his family, but often takes time to volunteer his services free of cost to the community and organizations whenever the need arises. This is, of course, when he's on the island, as he also travels the world, offering relief, medical care, and training to countries and persons in need. His latest being emergency medicine and first responder training to hundreds of EMTs, military and law enforcement personnel, doctors and nurses in various provinces of India, including Udaipur and Jaipur in Rajasthan, India. I want to welcome Dr. Courtney Lewis to make his presentation.
Good evening, church. Indeed, always a pleasure and an honor to be amongst you. To my fellow panelists, good evening as well. I think tonight I'm here more to learn than I am to teach, because my fellow panelists' careers span the length of my lifetime. So there's very little I can tell them about how to be a man. But the task is mine tonight to talk about the physical aspects or the physical things that affect men, especially in their homes. Now, you will find that as each panelist would have spoke, there would be themes that would have been repeated every time we talk. And as the good Reverend said, each of our parts could easily be a multi-hour discussion, on several different evenings. So I'll do my best to be concise. In short, from the medical aspect, from the scientific aspect, when you talk about physical things that affect men, you can't just cut them off at physical. True health encompasses a trinity of things. There's the biological or the physical, there's the psychological, including the spiritual, and there's the social. And for any true healthy person, you cannot have a divorce of any of the three. The three must be together. It's funny how things in life always have trinities, don't they? You wonder where they come from. So, you'll find that a man, and when we say a man, we're talking about the social construct of a man, what society deems and considers to be a man, what we've all been raised and trained to think of as a man. If he doesn't have all of those three things in harmony in his life, he cannot be a healthy man. And a household with an unhealthy man is an unhealthy household. By the way, it is not lost on me the irony of having a discussion on men's health on International Women's Day. So, ladies, thank you so much for spending your special day in our company. We appreciate it. Now, when we talk about the social aspects of men's health, human beings are social beings, and men are social organisms. if you try to separate a man from his community, from his people, from his tribe, he can't be healthy. So the first bit of advice I want to give to all the ladies, mothers, sisters, wives in attendance is allow the men of the household to congregate, to socialize, to converse with their communities and with their peers. It forms part of their health. Okay, I know a lot of women in the household, they don't like when the man is out the household. Okay, the man finished working at 5 and at 5:30 he's getting phone calls. Why are you not home yet? Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? All very fair questions. I am not saying they're unfair. However, an understanding should be come to that he is to be allotted a certain amount of time that he is to spend amongst his peers. It is part of his mental health. A man who, some people call him quiet and he's just quiet. It doesn't really cause much of an issue, but he doesn't really come around, doesn't really talk to anybody, he just kind of keeps to himself. Beware the individual. Okay, a human being is supposed to be social. It's a different thing altogether having a small circle as opposed to having no circle. Right? Men are supposed to have circles. They're supposed to have social lives. They're supposed to have conversations. They're supposed to be told by their peers that they're doing a good job or they need to do better. A lot of the times you'll find that there's an argument in the home, the man leaves the home, he goes and has a night with the boys. When he comes back, completely different attitude. All of a sudden he's apologetic, he's bringing flowers, he's bringing candy, he's rubbing her feet. And she's saying, wait. We didn't just fight a second ago? But he fought and he went out and he saw his brothers and the brothers told him, what are you doing? You're not coming sleeping by me tonight, You're going back by her. So come, let me take you by the shop and you buy some chocolates and you buy some flowers. And then we play around the dominoes and I taking you back home, All right? So you may actually find that it helps your circumstances allowing him that social freedom. Likewise, we as men, we also have to consider our duties to our community. If we do not have that sense of duty, we do not have that sense of we must share, we must give, we must serve, it robs from being a healthy man. That sense of accomplishment that you have when you say, listen, my neighbor is building a home, I know he can't really afford to pay the contractor or whatever. I think I'm going to go over there, help him mix some concrete, or I'm going to help him lay some bricks, and that should take some of the pressure off of him. You come home the evening, and if you had trouble sleeping before, no trouble sleeping that night. Not only are you physically tired, but you are socially satisfied that you have completed something. When you talk about the psychological includes mental health, the spiritual health, all of those aspects that I won't go over again because the good brothers are here to do that this evening. But the summary would be, as a man, whether you want it or not, you are built for certain purposes. You're built for certain duties. And the women in the home need to have that understanding as well. I myself, I grew up in a home, no father, single mother household. I'm accustomed to a woman providing for me and doing things for me and so on and so forth. And I once dated a young lady, unfortunately not my wife passed, I'm so sorry, but I once dated a young lady, this was before I was married, who came from another single parent household. Again, ironically, no father. And she was also raised, do everything yourself, take care of yourself, provide for yourself, etc., etc. When we dated, I found that no matter what gift I purchased for this young lady, she wouldn't be happy with it because gifts were kind of meaningless to her. The only things that were meaningful to her were what she provided for herself, because that's how she was trained, right? And again, it's funny because both individuals, myself and her, so it's not completely her fault, are coming from households with no dominant male figure, right? So now, what I started to realize was I became very dissatisfied with the relationship because I didn't feel like I could bring anything to it. There's nothing I could do to make her happy. She didn't need me to keep her safe. She didn't need me to provide anything for her. I didn't even feel as though she needed me to give her jokes. Needless to say, the relationship didn't last very long. And I don't think anyone would find it ironic if I told you that now, maybe a decade and a half later, the young lady is still single. She's still single. Right? So these are the shortcomings of when men don't fulfill our purpose and our duties. Because if a man is not allowed to provide, if he's not allowed to take care of, if he's not allowed to protect, he won't feel his true purpose, and he will not be healthy and happy in that household. And you may find he spends less and less time in said household. Whereas all the wife would have to do to keep him there, say, well, sweetheart, if you're not home, I can't lift this gas tank, I can't bring in these groceries. I can't reach down the pots to cook dinner. If you tell any man you can't reach the pot to cook dinner, you best believe he's coming home right after work. Because dinner must be cooked. Okay, so he's coming home to reach down that pot. Trust me. Exactly. Lastly, and to be concise, we're talking about the physical, the biological aspects of being a healthy male. There are three main things, and again, not to take up the whole night, but there are three main things that tend to destroy men's health in a home. One are stress-related disorders. And these stresses can come from multiple fronts. The stress can come from within the home. The stress can come from within the society. The stress can come from work. If the man has no healthy outlet for these stresses, you're not going to have a healthy household. Because he must find an outlet for them. And if he's not finding the outlet for them at home, he will seek the outlet for them somewhere. Another one is, of course, physical diseases. Cardiovascular diseases, cancers, injuries. And usually we talk about diseases, we like the quote-unquote sexy ones, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the prostate cancer, the ones that everybody talks about. But really, if you looked at incidents in terms of how frequent something happens per person in your community, when it regards to men, injuries are always in the top three. Whether it's because of the professions that we choose, our protective natures, the recreational activities that we tend to engage in, physical injuries will always impact a man's health. His home environment will determine how well he recovers and how fast he recovers. If he has a very stressful household, no support, no one to rub his back, no one to wrap his knee, no one to soak down that area that he can't get to, his recovery time will be much longer. Much, much longer. And lastly, of course, you're talking about the intimate health, the physical health between the partners, the man and his wife. Right? Unfortunately, in our society, I blame what the young people call woke culture, where in woke culture, male roles are being diluted. Modern society is doing away with the divisions of men roles and female roles. It's people roles, and anybody can do anyone's role. In my personal opinion, if I had a plank of wood and I had to divide that plank of wood into two usable pieces, I can use a saw and I can use a hammer. Both instruments will break the wood, but only one is going to break the wood in the way that I want to use it after. So whether a man and a woman can both do the same things, that is fine. But a man is designed to do his purpose a particular way. And no other tool but a man can do the job the way the man would do the job. And vice versa. If this was a woman's discussion, no man is going to do the job designated to a woman better than a woman would do it. So this dilution that society is trying to push on us of dividing the roles and blurring the lines between roles, it is harming families, it's harming society. I have not seen that culture help a family yet. So I will desist, I will end here, and I look forward to the open discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. I want you to also give a hand to the 3 panelists. So we really appreciate them taking the time to come, and not only to come, but to prepare and to present as well. For the next several minutes, we want to have an open session, an open discussion. I would invite you to ask the questions that from areas of concern to you. We will also allow you to make comments as well. I would just indicate to you that we'd really like you to think before you speak, so you make it really short and to the point. Yes? But we certainly are going to open up the floor. But before I do that, I want to just welcome those that are joining us on the internet, and particularly on the Zoom platform. I want to say to those that we're happy to have you, and we will also entertain your questions, although I would prefer that you list your questions, type your questions in the chat, and I will monitor the chat, and I will relay your questions. So for those on the Zoom platform, we'll give you an opportunity as well to ask your questions. Just type your questions, and we'll try and have them addressed as well. I will monitor the Zoom. So the floor is open, and for anyone who wishes to ask a question, we really want to invite you to take the floor. Do we have a mic that we can move around? Technician? Oh, beautiful. Is there any? You have a question?
Mine is portable.
Yes, mine as well. But anybody? All right. While you're thinking, I have a question, and I have perhaps an area that I would love to open up a little bit of a discussion on, and I want to direct a question to Sydney. The issue of fear, drive-in behavior. And I wanted to expand on that a little, because in the Bible, the most often repeated commandment is fear not. So it's actually consistent with the Word of God. And I'd really love you to just share with us a little bit your thoughts on that. Issue of fear, drive-in behavior, yes? Anxiety, things like that, and mental health. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very insightful as well, just as you mentioned. And I think that the roots of it is definitely from within the scriptures. All right? For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and what else? A sound mind. So when you think of a sound mind, what lies within the parameter of a sound mind? You're talking about good, cognitive awareness, thinking in terms of how aware a person is. How is he able to relate to the world around him? And I think that is a reflection mainly from how he relates within himself. And so the question of fear comes from when we look at some of the disparities that we could experience, even as men, some of the disparities we can experience. And one of the popular ones we can talk about is anxiety. Right? What makes a person actually, it's that crippling feeling that usually happens. People would recognize it, that churning in the stomach, or just that just that thought of what's going to happen. Right? We've just come through the pandemic. People lost job, men lost job. But one of the things that a man feels, or would usually feel, is how equipped he is to deal with his home and to deal with his family. And something about us, that when that is not present, it's almost like it doesn't have to do with anyone, but just the mental, the pathways within the brain, we feel emasculated. We feel less than, because one of the things we look at is the future. How am I going to provide for them? And it's anxiety. It brings anxiety. There is something about the future, right, that usually stimulates the anxiety and the fear. That when we spend enough time there, and this has nothing to do with planning, which is healthy, but so that we spend, what am I, what's going to happen? When am I going to get a car, or get a home, or when am I able to be rich, or whatever. It basically stimulates that sense of fear. It comes out to that fear. Am I going to be able to be who I am? And when it comes to the soundness of mind, a healthy mind is one that, again, is able to relate to, the internal factors of who we are as men. And how I'm able to not only communicate with the world that I have within and to create that harmony within it, but how it extends itself out to the world around me. I hope I've expounded a bit on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the floor is open. Sister Jackson.
I'm not sure which of the person for the panelists.
It's open. It can be an open question, and anyone can address it. No problem.
But I would like to find out a little bit more. There's an old adage, and one of the posts not doing the professor's indicator that males sometimes they maybe it's Mr. Rettimeyer question which whoever wants to answer, that we have in our communal that males should not cry. They were socialized that way to be masculine. You alluded to the point that if a man the fear of him not able to take care of his family, give them a home, buy a car, and all the rest of it. How does him not able to do those help him in terms of being who he is in terms of a man and express to his spouse or the children that this is the situation here and I am not able to do so because of XYZ factor?
And I think it's a really sound question, a good question. And when it comes to the fear, and this is in my understanding, my true understanding, and I'm speaking out of a little experience as well. When it comes to fear and how a man feels, when he's not able to attain the things that he needs to attain. And usually, there's something that about a man and his masculinity and the belief that, okay, I must be tough. I've got to be the strong one, so I need not to show my fear. You need to show that you're afraid, and usually it comes out at times in anger. Right? When he gets angry at his situation, he may come home from work and the boss mistreated him. He wouldn't say that the boss treated him, but he basically takes it out on the family and the children. He's grumpy, he's feeling a particular way. Or even in his friend group where, he's probably put down by the alpha male, he feels a little, less than himself, and he reacts. Right? And these symptoms come with the anger, and the family receives that. Right? The people that he loves the most tend to receive that. Right? But if I had to say the best way to address that, right, it's the thing called truth, right? And truth is just tapping into truly how he feels, what is the emotion. And I think that is a learned skill. It's a learned skill, so at least for us men. I don't know about most, but growing up, my father, God bless him, really, you're really good Christian gentleman today. But my father, I love you, give you a hug, that wasn't present. That wasn't present. We didn't know about that. We didn't know about, son, you can do this. Right? It never happened. And needless to say, how much I could tell you how I struggled. I personally struggled with that. I struggled with, expressing emotions and how I feel. Right? So stuffing it down inside, basically, because we got to be tough, right? It tends to show itself up in other forms. Whether it's anxiety, anger, resentment, you look at you can go down the line. Right? So his truth, being authentic with his truth, and learning how to, be able to share about how he feels, right? Usually go, think about a guy, just, women, how do you feel when your man, your husband is able to look you in the eye and say, I feel defeated, I feel sad. I feel as if, things are just not, going right for me. Right? That's not weakness, that's strength. So it takes a strong person to do these things. But I think that within the culture that we live in at times, basically the grooming of it, most men have not been given that opportunity to see things from that perspective. Right? Thank you. I hope I've answered.
Beautiful. Yeah. Reverend Jackson.
Yeah, I think now this thing is getting very deep.
We have a couple minutes.
Yeah, but because of the fact, and in addition to all of that, no, there was no place of redress. There was nobody you could go to, and there were certain questions that would be shut down. Certain things you couldn't say. They don't discuss certain things with you because those are not for children. And those are, you want to say children are up to quite a good age, yeah? You're not allowed into certain things. Now it goes back to the point we were making earlier about our history, our past, how we were brought up, how we were socialized, right? Because we were taught that if you cry as a man, that it's like crying is feminine. Crying is not feminine, crying is human. All right, and anybody, suppose if you can't cry, something wrong with you. All right, and so the thing goes back to how we were trained, how we were taught, how we were socialized, and because that's what I said earlier, if these things are not addressed, it's going to create a problem, because how we were trained is how we are going to deal with our spouses. And you're going to find it difficult if she can't accept that, or if he cannot accept that. Well, let me say she, because we're talking about us as men. But the fact is, she might have grown up in a different environment where she's accustomed to hearing these things, being embraced and being assured and being encouraged and this kind of thing. So it's really getting deep. And we have to, if we don't go back to the roots, the whole question of even a man providing for his house, even in the very scripture that tells you if you don't provide for your house, you're worse than an infidel and you have denied the faith. That is deep, it's serious. All right, so we need some help. Yes. We have to go back now to our source of connection, which is God, and find out how it is, because even from the very beginning, the Lord taught men a couple of things that we need to take note of. To be responsible, because when he created the garden, they tell them, you are in charge, tell him you're in charge of this, that is responsibility. All right, and there are a number of other things that went along with it. Right, and so, because God actually addressed a number of these issues in the very beginning.
All of them.
Okay, good. In the very beginning. So, if we get back to the root and how to understand, and in most cases, we need to get back to God to learn from Him. I leave that.
Bless the Lord. Thank you. So we're going to invite Brother Crump, and then I will take a question that I have on the Zoom after Brother Crump. Brother Crump.
Good night, church. Good night to the head table. I am happy to hear Reverend Jackson spoke about provision for the family. I want to zoom in on the financial side. In a family where the wife might be bringing in twice as much as the husband, is this a good thing, or are we seeing a recipe here for disaster? If the wife is bringing in more than the husband, and explain that, just expound on that for me, sir.
Okay, now, there is no cause for alarm. There's no cause for alarm if there is a good understanding as to your vision, your plan, and so on for your home. And to my mind, everything, that's where we talk about the man being the provider or being the provisionary for the home. It brings it to the point where there must be a plan. And where there's a plan, you work everything according to the plan. and I know that this is far from many of us, because you probably don't even think of no plan. And if you have an organized structure and you have plan, and a plan always includes goals. And once you have something you're working towards and both parties understand what we're doing, we work towards that. But to me, even the whole question of and I know this going to raise some, even that must be in subjection according to scripture. In terms of the wife.
Say it. Say
yes,
it, yes.
That's what I'm saying. Even that must be in subjection to the husband, even as it pertains to the scripture. Even that. So the monies and how it is.
Everything in the house.
Everything.
Yes.
And how it is done. That's why I talk about having a plan. So you work according to the plan. A woman there must not be no threat, and there must no threatening language, no threatening attitude or behavior coming from the woman towards the man because you are making more money. Because that does not change the order that God set out. Okay? It doesn't change the order.
I think it's important to note, sorry to cut you, Reverend.
Yeah, you're good.
It's important to note that the roles in a household can't be bought.
Right.
Right? That simple statement has to be understood between both partners. Your roles in your home can't be bought. So a man being a head of his household doesn't necessarily mean that he must make the most in a household. You can have a household with a husband, a wife, and 3 children, and the children make more money than the parents make. Mm-hmm. Do the children run the household? Correct. Right? So the roles can't be bought. So what needs to happen is if you have a proper structure in your home and a proper agreement in your home, it doesn't matter who's producing more money, it just goes towards the structure of the family.
Excellent. I want to bring in.
I want to make sure you get your okay.
Yes. For now. If there's a special request, the men will consider it.
Mr. President, that's your question, you know.
The reason why I asked that, okay, is why I have discussions with many, well, we shouldn't want to call them secular people, but ladies who are not Christians. And the point you make there is always my contention. At one point in time in my life, I was making a lot more money, but that does not say that I am the head of my home. Okay,
Can't
my
say
children.
that.
No, I would not say that.
You have to behave yourself.
I will. That's my king. And my children are making more money than when I started working. All right. The thing is that we need to send a message. I know this is Men's Week and whatever, but we need to send a message to our Christian ladies who are married, one, and our Christian ladies who are not married and expecting to get married, that position can be bought with money. Because it's more than just you bringing in the money. What about his investment in the family in terms of praying, encouraging, putting that extra work when the wife is out, taking care of the home when she's not there or she's going to study or something? We don't always look at that. What we look at is that, okay, the man must provide $1 million for me to make me happy. It doesn't make you happy.
That's an excellent point you made there, right? Because, and Doctor, that is so true. A lot of things we take for granted and we think that they can be bought. There's no price attached to any of these things. As we are saying here, there must be a plan, there must be an understanding as to what you are trying to go after and how we are trying to get it. It's not who bringing in the most money. It's when, for example, in our homes, everything come together and we work towards what we're working towards.
Okay, I want to bring in the question from the Zoom because we really want to have the participation from those that have taken the time to join us on Zoom as well. So the question is, and I want to make it open, yes, the question is, how is it, what is the best way to communicate masculine culture to the feminine, where we are now in terms of the world situation, community, socialization, etc., being referred to as bad and toxic. It's referred to as bad and toxic when you try to put a masculine twist on leadership, as opposed to saying leadership can be either way. Yes? This person is saying they took a lot of grinding in high school and it made them stronger in many ways. It's just, referring to the fact that the physical tussles gave them strength. And he wants to see how best we can bring back and communicate the reality of masculinity and our behavior to our feminine counterparts who may see it as harmful. And I think the whole idea is the whole issue of gender equality, gender equity, things like that. So, Dr. Lewis, you can start the ball rolling on that. How best can we communicate our masculinity in this type of culture where it's considered, abrasive?
So I find a lot of arguments that we have right now in society, they're devoid of context. So we remove the context from the arguments that we make a lot of the times. That whole ideology of masculinity, or that sensationalization that the things that happen that make society run well, they are inherently masculine, right? That is a concept brought up by people who are trying to remove the role of men from society, which in my mind is a dangerous mindset, because I think both genders, both sexes, they have purpose and they have their value and they have their function. Now, the context I would like to use to help answer that question is this: in which instance? Because when you talk about a household or the home, there are clear delineations for the structure in which it should be organized. Now, when you talk about a business organization, for instance, a company of some sort, there's nothing that says that the person that runs the company must be a man. And what some people do sometimes in today's woke culture is they equate home to business. And that is a dangerous argument. You can't do that. You must separate those two things, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's, right? So, in terms of a company, there's nothing that says a woman can't run a company. And her running the company, we're going to be afraid because all of her reactions are going to be emotional. All of her decisions are going to be weak, and it needs a man at the helm to run properly. That's flawed thinking. A woman can run a company. All right? But don't equate the company to the household. The household is different. The household has a set structure that must be followed. Now, how do you exercise masculinity? You simply behave in the role that you're designed to fulfill. For instance, when I walk into a board meeting, there's a CEO. The CEO is a lady. I'm a board member. The CEO puts forward an idea or an agenda item and wants it discussed. I'm not going to discuss it with my masculinity. I'm going to discuss it with my brain for that company. Some may say, well, look, you see, Dr. Lewis is so rational and just came to the point so quick and easy. That's why I need a man to be CEO. That's flawed thinking. Because it may have been that lady's idea to have male Dr. Lewis on her board. Because she likes how Dr. Lewis thinks and she wants Dr. Lewis's ideas. So she has me on the board to fulfill that purpose. So she can lead, she can run her company, and it's her company, it belongs to her, she can run it. And I don't need to supersede her every conversation or cut her ideas and input mine because only my masculine ideas matter. That is where the toxicity part of the argument comes in, but it stems from me treating her company like my home. They're not the same.
What would you say it's related to how we portray masculinity? Because the question may also refer to the whole idea of a male, yes, operates in a different manner to a female, and this goes back to physiology as well, your biology, your makeup, I mean just your chromosomal arrangement, all of that, yes. So there's a distinct difference, and therefore the idea of how we relate, I think, is a significant issue here as well, in addition to context, just how you relate. Yes? I mean, your thoughts on that?
Mine again?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. No, I agree. And again, that's what I'm saying. Toxic masculinity only comes in, or the term toxic masculinity only comes in when I believe that because I am a man, that the way that I function, the way that I interact, and the way that I behave must be the only right way. That's when
You repeat that.
That's when it becomes toxic. When I believe that as a man and I behave like a man with my male thinking and my male rationale, that only my way is right because I'm a man and only a man can be right. That's when it becomes toxic. But if I can be a male in that context, offer my view, offer my opinion, and then leave it to who the decision maker is, there's no toxicity.
Excellent. I think we've addressed the question because the question was about how you relate as communicate. Thanks. Yes. Rev.
There's some things that just can't change. Yes, there's some things that just cannot change. And I want to agree with the doctor. But there's something, God put a certain structure in place. From the very beginning, from very creation, He set up an order. And my concern is people's motive. What is the motive behind trying to push this agenda in terms of equality? Now, in terms of spirituality, we are all one in Christ. The Bible makes that clear. Right? But each person must understand his or her role and function in accordance. It says, look, husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Wives, submit to your husband. It said, children, obey your parents in the Lord. For this is right. Honor your father and your mother. There's an order there. There's a structure right there. And if we follow the structure, we would get good results, my brother. But the problem is, as I said, we don't follow the structure. And I want to know, what is the motive? Because a woman can never be a man. A man can never be a woman. And I don't care what they do, they can't change. Exactly. You can't change that. Just how you come out is so you will stay. I know we're trying to implement and improvise all kinds of people these days, because even in your travel documents and now they're having male, female, other. Who is?
We have a question from Brother Greenaway, and then we have Brother Ben afterwards.
Well, in that really question, really, I'm sitting there and I look around. I just want to make an observation, and just want to ask something of us. Our superintendent is here. I really would like us to set up with the agreement of the panel there. We need to set up a repeat of this wider for the men in the Wesleyan community, the church, and invited sinners also, men and women alike. Make it bigger, wider to help people. Because listen to this thing, we have a pandemic in this country where men really do not understand themselves a role. I have found myself several times in town, had to part fights from young men who decided that the girl or the lady or my girlfriend did not listen, so they decide to thump, because me, I'm the man. When you listen to what the reason for that, there's no reason. It just feel like I'm the man and I should. So I believe the spiritual problem is bigger than we think, because our youths are going to prison, our drugs, everything is a spiritual problem. And this means a lot to me tonight, deep. I have sons. So I will really happy if superintendent and the church, and again invite other churches, let us find a forum, make it bigger with a repeat of this thing.
I want to
It's a
challenge your
serious thing.
boss to work with the superintendent.
Yes.
All right? I challenge you to do that. Brother Ben? And anybody else who has a question? I'm aiming to end in about 10 minutes or so. So if anybody else has a question, I'd like you to, think about it and be concise. Brother Ben, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit the fear issue, Mr. Rettimeyer. And I'm wondering if there is a sense in which fear could be used as used for positive reinforcement. Did you say that people's actions are ultimately determined by some underlying fear? Right, okay, so that, I guess, implies that positive actions, too, could be informed by fear. And so I think I would want you to elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think for the Christian, fear always is a negative term. And we know what Paul says to Timothy, he hasn't given us a spirit of fear. You quoted it, but power, love, and a sound mind. So, and we've learned that the opposite of fear is faith. But I recall as a young guy, you're Guyanese, you used to live in Linden? Okay, so you know where the employment office used to be across the river? Anyway, I used to look across from Lightchus Mackenzie High School to the employment line across the river. And those guys used to be in the hot sun for hours looking for either a day's work or a 2 days work or whatever. And the fear, for me, of being caught in that line motivated me to say, I'm going to use the only weapon I have, my brain, to not go there. That was positive reinforcement. So I think if we can probably find certain examples, some other examples of where fear can push us to do positive things, that would be good for the men. One other thing, that was a comment in a sense, but Pastor Jackson, anybody, you talked about leadership. And yes, I think there is a crisis of leadership, but because my major role in life has been in education, I can't escape talking about it. And I'm wondering if part of the problem with male leadership is the fact that men have not found it necessary to, on par with their female counterparts, seek better, I'm not even going to say higher, better education. What's your thought on that?
Right. I would certainly agree with you in that regard. And maybe if we would use the enthusiasm and the passion of our female counterpart as a positive to push us to go further, go higher, I believe it will work and it will help. But I really believe that we are not, as you say, we're not as passionate and we are not as, concerned as our female counterpart in terms of achieving certain things. We probably sometimes think that maybe because there's some young men out there, they don't care how they make the money once they make it. And the concern is making the money. And so if that is going to be the concern that is pushing you, you might tend to think, and some of these guys, Brother Ben, would think, you can make $1,000 a day selling drugs. Why go and help yourself by studying hard, because they think that process is too boring, it takes too long, and it has too much demands upon it. So they were quicker because their concern is making the money. But the thing is, if you educate yourself, you position yourself not only in that regard, but you position yourself because you will become a person that is qualified for application and jobs in a number of areas. So I would agree with you. I don't think we're putting enough as men into that. I think we need to do some more.
Just to add.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Rettenmeyer.
Okay, just to add really quickly, Joe. And thank you for raising that point. That was a very good on the topic of in fear. In as much as there is, there's fear, right? There is healthy fear, and you're totally on part with that. And how can we recognize healthy fear and differentiate between what is an unhealthy fear and the healthy fear? So when we look at behavioral responses such as anger and anxiety, that comes from an unhealthy sense of fear. And just as you mentioned, the line observation, you walk through the line, and you look through the line, you're like, this is what I don't want to be. It somehow reinforced something to you in a more healthy fashion, and you were able to basically pursue a purpose, right? A purpose that is totally different from that. So yes, there is healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. And it seems, I think Reverend Jackson was right when he said we're getting deep, because it seems that life in itself and even language in itself there will be the paradox in which we're talking about something, but then yet again a deeper value or another value comes out of it. But in the context of fear and what it produces in terms of what is unhealthy, who am I? How am I responding to this situation? What is it causing me to do? Because I think you will agree with me, that we all have thoughts, right? And thoughts basically stimulates the emotion. So if you want to understand what we're thinking, look at how you're feeling. Right? So thoughts, emotion, and behavior. Right? So when the outcome or the behavior is unhealthy, right? Let's check the thoughts. Right? It's fear, unhealthy fear. Right? And if the behavior does produce positive outcomes, right? It has come from the source of a healthy fear that has stimulated that. But thank you.
And the healthiest fear is the fear of God. It is beginning of wisdom.
All right, so we do probably time for one or two more questions, Reverend.
Yes, a couple of questions, Mr. Moderator. Let me first go to Reverend Jackson, and if he could offer any suggestions as to how the church could better address the whole issue of preparing boys for manhood. All right, I want us to talk practical solutions, especially in light of, we talk about how we do church. In the literature, it talks about the feminization of church, how we do our worship, and lots of the things that we do, they don't appear masculine. All right, and so therefore, I really would love for you to guide us and to give us some guidelines as to how we prepare our boys for the whole issue of manhood. While you're thinking about that, I go to Brother Rettenmeyer. And Brother Rettenmeyer, we watch the news, we pay attention to what's happening in our country. We see the violence. We hear about what's happening in school, and I'm reading, that some of the issues with schools, and how can we as a church, as a people of God, you understand, help and assist these boys who are not necessarily interested, they don't come to church, because from my vantage point, I will know that there's so many of our boys are not exposed to church, they don't go to church, they don't know scripture. Let me tell you, when we went to school, we had to learn some of scripture, but we go into a classroom now and they don't know, they're not familiar at all. All right, so I really wanted to think, as society is having a problem in terms of our boys getting more and more violent, how can we as a church look at those? All right, I'd really appreciate some.
Okay, Pastor, I think we have our work cut out for us. As a church, I believe that we need to pay more attention to premarital counseling. And as part of it should be to indicate expectations on our men as it relates to their responsibility to the home. Because the scriptures, if you read the Proverbs, it talks a lot about son listening to your father's instruction. All right? And before our men become fathers, they have to be engaged and they have to go through a period of courtship and all of that. I believe we need to pay some attention to that particular time. And when we're doing premarital counseling, help to prepare them for that. I also believe that now, if that is done, Pastor, and then the men take that seriously, when they become fathers, they'll begin to pass on the values that they would have received, and that will help to spread, and it will take some of the weight off of the church per se. And because I'm of the view that a lot of the teaching that needs to be done, even so far as family life is concerned, needs to take place in the home. But we would be ill prepared if we don't train our men at the level of premarital counseling and make sure they understand these things. And they talk about roles and all of that, because it's a role of the father to really train. And if our men get that training there and then they would implement it, I believe that would help to alleviate that particular problem. I think. Yes, ma'am.
But don't we have to train them but boys first?
But that's what I'm saying.
Coming up, teach them early, because if you don't, what you're saying, you have lots of value. But if I have a 5-year-old child who's a male and he gets injured and they say, don't cry, your boys don't cry. He goes to school and he can't even kind of stand himself. Or he goes to Sunday school and he says, oh, I like my teacher, I don't want to go back. What is happening here is that we are not giving him a foundation from that age where he knows how to maneuver himself through the obstacles of life and through the rigors and all the rest of it. We are waiting until he gets to the age where he's going to get married. What happens to those years before he gets married?
Pastor Jackson, let me interject a second.
Yes.
I think we're talking about the same thing. The problem is, I think that context, you're putting the chicken before the egg. I think what the pastor is saying is, who is going to give that small child the instruction? First and foremost, the instructor needs to have proper instruction. Right. We need to ensure that the person that's speaking to that small boy is going to be giving that boy the right message. So as a church, what the pastor is saying is, first and foremost, we prepare the instructors, and then we come up with a plan and a strategy to go and approach who needs the instruction. Right? So that boy would be addressed, yes, but who's addressing him? That's what we have to be careful of. The next thing that I want to remind the church of is this. I say this again being the youngest person on this panel, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But again, probably my perspective is a valid one, because the question I was understanding from the brother was, how do we address getting the community to be back to where it's supposed to be? And I think what the church, or at least in my observation, I may be wrong, I'm not attacking the church, but one of the places where I see the church failing is in ministry. The church does a very good job of ministering within the church. We have to get back to ministering in the community, right? So the men in the church, we get our proper instruction. Once we have our proper instruction, we need to leave the church and go out. We need to meet those boys that need the help, that need the instruction, where they are, and provide them with the examples that they're looking for, even if they're not cognizant of the fact that they're looking for it. Right? Now, one of the reasons why me as a young man, I might turn to selling drugs is there must be a motivation. Right? I see another person around my age, he's driving a much nicer car than me, he's dating a much prettier girl than me, he has on better jewelry than me, and I'm wondering, how did he get all of that? Right? So I go ask him, and he says, well, I sell a little thing on the corner and I make some money, and I went and I bought all of it. I don't have any other pathway. I have no other vision. I know no other way of getting to where I want to get to, so I follow the instruction that I was given. Go and sell some stuff and buy what I want. Now, if a member of the church were to pull up on the block where the boys are hanging out, where they're playing basketball, the member pulls up in his BMW X5. He steps out of his BMW X5 in his tailored pinstripe suit, with his wonderful watch, with his wonderful manners and haircut and grooming. All the ladies in the neighborhood are saying, "Oh, Dr. Lewis, how are you doing?" And the young man saying, "Wow, I want that. I want to drive a car like that. I want the women to call me when I step out. I want to dress like that man." And the young man, trepidatiously walks up and says, "Good afternoon, sir." I say, "Hi, young man, what's going on? What's up?" "I'm all right. I want to ask you a question. Where you got that car from?" And my response is, well, I had some conversations with some men who know more than me, who are older than me, that go to the church down the road, and I spend a Wednesday night with them every so often, and some Sunday mornings when I have the time I go and I fellowship with them, and I ask them, how do I be a better man? How do I behave? How do I comport myself? How do I carry myself so women will be interested in me? How do I dress so society will think that I look dapper? Right? And he says, "Okay, you feel anybody can come to that Wednesday night?" "Yeah, anybody can come to the Wednesday night. Try it, come through. As a matter of fact, I'll make some time this Wednesday and I'll pick you up and we'll go together. We'll talk, I'll give you some instruction, I'll put you on the path, I'll tell you how you can get a job like mine, how you can get a car like mine, how you can get a house like mine, how you can get a wife like mine, how you can get a life like mine. No need for drugs." Right?
Beautiful. Sydney, you had some? Yes, Brother Pastor.
Yeah.
Pastor, did you, just want to make sure your question.
Afterwards, we'll have Reverend Christie as our final question.
Yes, so we could address the question of church and Kidjuzi. And in my best judgment, I would piggyback most on what the Reverend has said, along with the good doctor, in terms of, definitely outreach. And I also think that, if the question could be changed, because we get a chance to see the behaviors, and we see it in the news, as was mentioned, we see it happening, we just see it on the streets, and so we get to see the behavior, right? And if you could change the question and ask not why the behavior, but rather why the pain, right? Because sometimes it's what's beyond the behavior, and how the target could be to reach the pain that happens behind the behavior. Because most behaviors are usually exhibited because of something deeper than what's on the surface and how they're behaving. And I could be a prime example. I'm very free with my story, by the way. All right, I've had my struggles with addiction. All right, and when I come to learn the meaning of the word addiction, right, it actually comes from the Latin "addicere," which means bondage or slavery. Right. So again, we ask not why the addiction, but why the pain. You look in society, and I'm sure that we can all agree that one of the most prominent features of struggle is within addiction. Right? The marijuana use, the crack use, the alcohol use, right? And that in itself, exhibits behaviors, right, that are destructive not only to the individuals themselves, but also to our community. Right? So how could we reach them? One of the most powerful applications that I see, it's through therapy, through counseling, right? And could the church be equipped in such a way where folks within its body can understand, these ills of society, pick out the dominant ones, and able to equip members in order to address these things, and having these people come for counseling. A mother brings her child, or a 14-year-old boy, because she found him smoking marijuana, right? And she wants him to change. He goes to see a counselor, but then he goes to see a counselor. He leaves the counselor and he goes back to his group. Right? The action continues. Right? And then it's that. But then he comes within an environment where he feels connected. Right? He feels love for, care for, he feels as though someone understands his problems or what he's going through. It offers help. That's my
We're going to have Reverend Christie and then Dr. Lewis. You maybe want to make some remarks on the, after Reverend Christie. Reverend Christie.
Mr. Moderator, I was trying to find the right time to say what I wanted to say. It almost came just now. Put it this way. Good principles apply equally well to non-Christians as to Christians. And we have to be careful as a church that we don't Christianize relationships, because there are more non-Christians out there than there are Christians. And when we speak as a church, we have to be able to speak to the non-churched in a way that, in other words, you don't have to become a Christian to be a good husband. The principles that work for the Christian work for the non-Christian. And we sometimes cut ourselves off from society and those that we're ministering to by giving the impression that unless you become a Wesleyan, you can't live a good life. May not be getting across as I want to get it across, but we need to, that's about it.
So we want to thank Reverend Christie, and we will invite any comments on that you would wish to have. I would wish for Dr. Lewis to address the previous question from the Zoom platform. They wanted some clarification. So I'd ask Dr. Lewis to address that, and then any comments, any closing comments I'll invite, and then we will close. Thank you.
So, firstly, let me comment on what the good pastor just said a second ago. I usually make this joke with my friends that go to the gym. Unfortunately, much to my shame, I am the only non-gymite of my social group. All of the young men that I hang out with, they all have 18 abs and huge muscles, and I'm the only one that looks more realistically like a normal person. And they go to the gym every single day, and they spend so much of their day in the gym. Of course, it's because it's their interest, it's their passion. But sometimes when I walk into the gym and I say, hey, can I please use that machine? And they say, hey man, relax, the pros have the time, and then you can. I tell them, listen, you being on that machine is like a Christian being in church. You don't need to be in the gym. You've attained what you went gym for. If you are the perfect Christian, what are you going to church for? Church exists to bring people to God. If you're already in God, as important as the union of Christian people is, church is not as useful for you as for someone who is still seeking God. So it is the duty of those who go to church and those within the church to go reach out to those who are not yet in the church, or I don't want to say forgetting the church, but forgetting the building, who have not found God yet. And what you need to do is go out and show them what benefits there are to being a person who's found God, and make them want it. They have to want it. Then you'll see them flocking in. As a matter of fact, y'all, boy, we need a bigger church. All these young men coming here now for, we need a bigger church. It's because they have now seen the benefits and they want it. Right? Which is why, unfortunately, my weakness, whenever somebody from the church says, hey, Dr. Lewis, we're having a little get-together and, we want you to come along. It causes me physical pain to say, I'm busy. Right? It causes me pain because I've seen the good a church can do. And if I can give back to a church, I'm coming. Right? So that is the message we need to have out there. We need to go and approach these young men and show them. Listen, don't believe because I'm a Christian man, I can't sit on the block with you. I don't understand the problems that you have. I don't know that there are solutions for your issues that don't follow the path that you think you must be on. But if that conversation doesn't happen, you can't help them. You have to go meet them where they are. No. For the person on Zoom, again, can they see us? Oh, so for the person on Zoom, please do not think we've forgotten you. We haven't. I thought I would have answered your question, but I guess it was not complete. I think, and correct me again, the chat is still open, correct me if I'm still wrong, but I think the essence that they were getting at was, how do you justify socially, given your opinions from a masculine viewpoint, from a person that just doesn't want to hear a masculine viewpoint because they have a feminist viewpoint? And that, again, even that is an unfair statement, because a true feminist is someone who really uplifts women. And I think in society we misdefine things a lot, right? All these different phobias that we have. And, you know, you go down the street and someone says, "Hey, Dr. Lewis, you're so nice looking, I want to kiss you." And this is another young man. And they say, "Well, sir, I'm very sorry, but I would have a problem with that." "Well, Dr. Lewis, I didn't know you were homophobic." And I tell them, I don't think you're defining that term correctly. I'm not afraid of you. I don't have any hatred towards you. You have your belief structure and what you stand for. I have my belief structure and what I stand for. And the request you're making does not align with what I want to do or what I believe. And I can respect you and love you and care for you and simply disagree or not acquiesce. Right? Likewise, we have to be careful that, and as a society I'm talking about, not just men, all society, be careful of the imagery and the information that's being put out to you. Be very, very careful and guard carefully the information that you choose to absorb. Right? This thing about a feminist mindset, what society is labeling as a feminist mindset is not true feminism. True feminism is like when black people used to fight for black rights. True feminism is simply not demeaning women and not saying that women don't have a place and they don't have value. They do have a place and they do have value. Once you agree with that, you are a feminist. Going on to then say that nothing that a man can do can be right, or nothing that a man decides can be right because it comes from a man, is not feminism. That is just insanity. Okay? So I would say, what would I say to the persons who just don't want to hear anything a man has to say? I would say to the man that's saying it, find a different crowd. Right? Allow them to listen to who they want to listen to, and you go and spend your breath where it is better appreciated. Right? And if you're in a position where, let's say you're at a workplace and you can't avoid the person because you both work at the workplace, you have to be able to give your opinion, voice your train of thought, and then leave it alone. If they don't want to accept it, they don't want to accept it. You move on, walk away. If it's still not answered correctly, please tell us in the chat. I defer to my elders.
Thank you very much. I'm really going to close this session for tonight now. It's 9:05, and I do think that we've had an excellent session so far. I know some of you would like us to continue, but some of you want to go home. Yes, so we are definitely going to close at this time. But before we do so, I just want each panelist to give us one sentence that you'd like to leave with us. Just one sentence that you'd like to leave with us tonight. We really appreciate your participation and your interventions, but just one sentence that you'd like to leave with us, and then we'll close. Thank you.
He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear.
Thank you, Doc. Sydney?
I was thinking of the New International Version Hebrew scripture, which talks about, in those days and that time I will remove my laws from the tablets of stone and place it on the hearts of men. No man will have to tell his brother, do this or do that, but he shall be guided by his inner principles.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lewis?
It's so hard to choose one sentence, but I will quote an old medicine professor of mine, and I'm translating from his native language, which is Spanish, into ours, because the statement he made to me, he made it to me in a conversation we were having in Spanish, and he said, remember it is better. Sorry, remember that being a good doctor is good, but it is better to be a doctor that is good. I want all of us to remember that being a good man is good, but try to be a man that is good.
Thank you very much. So I really want to thank all of you for coming and for participating, and I really want us to stand and give a round of applause to the panelists for taking the time to come and for enlightening us. So at this time, I really want to just thank you personally for collaborating with me to make this happen. We really appreciate it on behalf of the district, man. God bless you real good. At this time, I'm going to turn over to Brother Dale. Put your money in your wallet, in your pocket, take out dollar paper, and put in the offering. God bless you.
Amen, amen, amen. We have a very fruitful night. A lot has been said, and we're going to have a follow-up session of this later because there's so much to impart and so much more to learn.